the co-founder of Disciple the Nations Alliance. It's a sought-after international speaker. He's the author of numerous books, including Disciple the Nations, The Power of Truth to Transform Cultures, and Life Work, a biblical theology for what you do every day. His lecture will be based on his third book, Nurturing the Nations, and Reclaiming the Dignity of Women in Building Healthy Cultures. Please join me in welcoming Darrow Miller.
Bob, thank you, and your team. Bob and I have known each other for about 15 years and really enjoy partnering together, and so thanks for the invitation. I don't know how we're going to do this. I've been given 45 minutes and to summarize this book, and normally when I teach this in a conference, it's a week-long conference of about 25 hours of teaching. So if you like what you hear, you can pick up the book. If you really like it, you can come to one of the conferences I teach sometime. The title of this is The Hand That Rocks the Cradle is the Hand That Rules the World. I worked for 27 years with an international relief and development organization called Food for the Hungry. Had the privilege of traveling to nations all over the world, and one of the things that broke my heart was the plight of women in virtually every country. I saw women who were crushed, who were beaten, who were treated as slaves even in their own households. I came to realize that the root of poverty is not lack of resources. Did you know the day before the earthquake in Haiti, there were 10,000 organizations working in Haiti? Mission organizations and relief and development organizations working in Haiti the day before the earthquake. The day before the earthquake, there were $3 billion of outside resources, money coming into Haiti the day before the earthquake. Since then, there's been $5 billion poured into Haiti, and you look at Haiti today, and it's not much different than before the earthquake. The root of poverty is not lack of resources. The root of poverty are lies. And one of the greatest causes of poverty in the world is the lie that men are superior to women. And you find this lie worked out in cultural stories all over the world. I was sharing these things in Africa a few years ago, and I had a young man come up to me and he said, "Darrow, in my tribe, we do not have a word for woman." And I said, "What do you mean you don't have a word for woman? How could you not have a word for woman? Half of the members of your tribe are female." He said, "It's true, we don't have a word for woman." I said, "Well, what do you call a woman?" He said, "We call her a tool." I was sharing these things in Indonesia 2 years ago, and I had a man come up to me and he said, "On the island that I come from and the language that we have, the word that we use for woman is the word for slave." If you were in India and you listen to the Hindu story of reincarnation, where does the female come from? The female comes from a male who sinned greatly in his last life. That's where female comes from. And if a woman in India wants to come back in the next life as a male, she must suffer in this life to pay, as it were, for her sins in the past life. What do you think life is like for females in India? Women are crushed. They are raped, they're battered, They're humiliated. They are aborted. We heard this morning of the disparity between number of men and number of women in China. The last I heard, there's 30 million more men in China than women. What happened to all those females? A majority of them were aborted before they were born. They are refugeed, they're abused, they're enslaved, and they're murdered. A Mexican painter painted this picture a couple of years ago, and I'd like you to look both in the foreground and the background. In the foreground, you see the suffering of women. In the background, you see the indifference of the culture. But not just the culture in general. You can see a man there with his Bible up in front of his face so he doesn't have to look at the scene in front of him. You see a pastor with his collar with a blindfold on. This is a global problem that we do not want to look at. A few years ago, an Indian economist wrote a provocative piece that said there are 100 million missing women. 100 million missing women. 100 million fewer women alive than they should be. Where are they? They're dead. Some of them were killed on their wedding night because they didn't bring a sufficient dowry. Some of them were killed the day they were born, when the instruction to the midwife was, if it's a baby boy, let it live. If it's a baby girl, kill it. And millions more were killed before they were born through sex selection abortion. 100 million fewer women alive than there should be. How many people did the Nazis kill in World War II? 6 million people. And what do we call that? We call that the Holocaust. A 100 million women. I've been told in India alone there are about 1 million females a year who are killed. Most of the abortions in India are sex selection abortions. How many of you knew this? I didn't know it until I started doing research for this book. And we said about Hitler, never again. And yet it's happening in front of us. And we don't even see it. There are two ways that we need to look at about how women are treated. First, in most sexist cultures, they are crushed. But in most modern cultures, they disappear. And I'll describe the difference between those things in a moment. I want to talk briefly about the rise of feminism. And there have been 3 major waves of feminism. What we know today as feminism was not the original feminism. And let me go back even further. The first feminist was Jesus Christ. If you look at his life, the way he treated women, the fact that women flocked to him. Why did they flock to him? Because he treated them with dignity and honor. He treated them with respect. But the first wave of feminism was in the 19th and early 20th century. It was governed or guided by a biblical worldview or the memory of a biblical worldview. Not everybody that were first wave feminists understood the biblical worldview, but this wave was born out of a biblical way of seeing the world. These feminists were interested in others. They were interested in the community. They valued women for both being made in the image of God, and thus valuable because they're made in the image of God, but they also valued women for their function as mothers. And their fight was against a male value system and power structure. They wanted to get women out of the sweatshops. Not just women, but children were working in sweatshops. We heard some of this last night about the lack of civilness in England. Women and children worked in sweatshops, and the first wave feminists wanted to get women and children out of the sweatshops and into the home. They fought for a family wage, a wage that was sufficient for the husband to support his family, so that women would not have to work. They were pro-life. They were against slavery and were among the leaders of the abolition of slavery. And they were for women suffrage. The second wave of feminism is the wave that we are most familiar with today. This is the wave from the mid to the late 20th century. It was not founded on a biblical worldview, but on a secular and humanistic worldview. Instead of being focused on community and others, the focus was on self. And women were valued for their being, but were not valued for their function, and wanted to eliminate the discussion of function. Their fight was against a female value system. They wanted to get women out of the home and into the marketplace. They were pro-abortion, because in being for abortion, a woman could be most like a man, unpregnant. Men can have sex whenever they want, but not have any consequences. So women in this movement, this second wave of feminism, supported abortion because it allowed them to become most like men, to be able to have sex whenever they want without the consequences. And they were part of a sexual revolution that we live in today, sex without responsibility. Sex as entertainment, sex as recreation.